It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app here on a Tuesday. I 1,000% almost said it was Wednesday. I guess last week we got to skip Tuesday. It was July 4th, which means today is July 11th, which is a Tuesday. Another random mixed bag of show. We got all kinds of stuff coming up. I want to start down the street, though. I would like to start on Capitol Hill, and that is where today there was a hearing about the NIL, name, image, likeness, something that I have spent about as much airtime as any single topic over the course of my career. A lot of that was before, frankly, I got to D.C. when a lot of this stuff was super hot topic back in the day of should players get paid, and then it happened, and then it kind of pops up, I would say almost quarterly, that there is some kind of litigation, there is some kind of new resolution. I think what's interesting today in this hearing is Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, said the quiet part out loud, which is something he is not unfamiliar in doing. If you follow politics, that sentence, Rand Paul said the quiet part out loud, is not something that is surprising to you. Whether you agree with the quiet part or not is a different story. But at the core of all these issues involving name, image, and likeness, at the core of these issues with college sports, it's about who gets power and who gets to do what and who doesn't. And that crosses with some of the other big issues in college sports over the last couple of days. Bob Huggins and his circus resignation or not at West Virginia. It comes with Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern, a big one. We talked about it a little bit yesterday through a different lens, but it comes down to who gets power, who gets to slide on things, who gets held accountable, who suffers consequences, and who doesn't. And ultimately, what Rand Paul says is anti-American and hilarious. At the same time, those two things can be true because he so tells on himself that it is so far beyond the pale that it's genuinely funny. It's funny because, to an extent, Rand Paul has no power here. He is a senator, and in that way, certainly, he has power. The regulators here have power. But what Rand Paul said, if you have not seen this on the internet yet, is basically, we can't do this name, image, likeness stuff. We can't pay the players. We can't allow this. We're going to have college kids driving nice cars. That was a paraphrase. Especially the part. You like that, Essig? Yeah, that was a steal. Hey, Matt, that was a steal from Russell's show. You could hear it in the hallway. Matt's off camera over there. He almost fell out of his chair laughing because that was funny. If you know, you know. The point is that what this is about is there are people like Rand Paul who would say, oh, it's tradition. It's about the spirit of the sport. They play because they love it, who deny the undeniable economic impact that college sports is a multi-billion-dollar business in which the labor for the entire growth of it, where it wasn't always a multi-billion-dollar business, but has been for 2 decades, if not 3 or 4 at this point, the labor is unpaid. And sure, there are nuances to this in terms of college football paying the bills for other sports that don't generate revenue. I think what you see there in part is a failure to market those sports and generate interest on the same level. Gross mismanagement is forever part of this because people put their best towards the things they think will make the most money. And to an extent, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But at the end of the day, college football is a billion-dollar business. College basketball is a billion-dollar business. Women's college basketball at this point is a damn near billion, if not billion-dollar business. These sports make massive amounts of money, and while a scholarship is great, they are employees. They are not getting paid. And for years, what I thought was worse, because if you want to make the argument about opportunity and how it spreads and the swimmers and divers and lacrosse players and field hockey players of all genders and every non-basketball and football program and outside of a select few baseball programs or volleyball programs that actually made money, that those moneymakers paid for everyone else, then you could have at least let the athletes benefit off of their fame. And that was prohibited. And what is undeniable is that is anti-American. It is anti-capitalism. And I realize like, saying anti-American's like, whoa, like that's an attack on a U.S. senator. Yeah. These are the same people that want unbridled capitalism in basically every other part. They don't want the regulation that should come with a healthy economic system in their sports because it gives power to people that they're uncomfortable with having power. Those people happen to be 18 to 22-year-old kids, and in basketball and football, predominantly African-American kids. And if I have to connect those dots for you, I don't know how much more clearly I can make this. They don't want the young black kids to have the cars and the power and the fame and the money. They just want them to perform the thing for their entertainment. And that's messed up. That's it. That's the blunt, true reality that unbelievably a sitting U.S. senator said out loud into a microphone on the record at a hearing today. And I would just simply ask you this. Why did any of us ever think that was okay, if you even are in the group that thought it was okay? And if you're like, well, I like the purity of college sports, I don't think then, I just want you to realize the consequences of that. Because unlike Rand Paul, who I think that is part of the equation for him in a conscious way, you might have never thought of it that way before. But what it doesn't mean is that those consequences aren't real. That discussion, that thing I said, just because you had never thought about it that way, isn't actually true and real and a part of why people have fought so hard the other way for years. There was an incredible quote, and now I wish I had pulled this back up so I could give the proper credit. So I apologize to whoever. Oh, it was Myron Metcalf from ESPN. Myron Metcalf from ESPN, who's a college basketball reporter, is great, was texting with a former athlete, or maybe it was a current player. It had to be someone in the last couple of years, but someone who had a pretty significant NIL deal and got it while they were in college. And he asked, what is the difference in your post-NIL life versus your pre-NIL life? And he said, the difference is early in the semester, in my freshman year, I used to call my mom for money. And now it's really nice because I can send her money. And just because you, Rand Paul, might think that a young kid is going to spend all his money recklessly on cars, one, welcome to capitalism, baby. People get to spend on what they want, whether it's good for them or not. We don't get to police that. We don't get to parent that. We don't get to make the rules. It's just markets. But two, more realistically, that's not what's happening. Sure, they might wind up with a nice car. Okay, cool. A kid who's really special at something we all want to consume gets a nice car. You don't have a problem with it when they become a pro. What difference does it make if it happens a year or two sooner? But it also is the ability to lift a family out of poverty, or to go from being a middle class to having some extra cash, to take some pressure off the bills at the end of the month, to just buy something nice for your mom who drove you to all those practices to get you the scholarship in the first place. So I don't know what this boogeyman thing is that people like Rand Paul are talking about. It's not real. What is real is that quote from the kid who talked to Myron Metcalf, who's sending money to his mom and making life a little bit better, or potentially, depending on the deal, if you're like Bryce Young at Alabama, a lot better. I don't see how anyone could be against that. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. I want to spin this next to what's going on at Northwestern. I talked about it yesterday through the lens of who we empower and who we don't in terms of abuse, but also who gets to get away with things, and when do we show grace, and what is the difference between quote unquote canceling somebody and actually showing accountability? It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app.
Daniels.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Continue to talk about some of the news of the day in college sports, which not only includes the NIL hearing in the Senate on Capitol Hill, but also Pat Fitzgerald fired last night as the head coach of the Northwestern football program. And I talked about this yesterday rather passionately because I think it's really important. And yeah, I have no regrets about that. Talking about how if you are someone who was like Darren Ravel in supporting Pat Fitzgerald, think about the consequences of your actions and your words and who they lift up and who they suppress, because those two things cannot happen simultaneously. That was one of Isaac Newton's laws, the old equal and opposite reaction deal. I don't remember which one. I wasn't that locked in to that part of my schooling. I locked in enough to remember that it's one of them, not locked in enough to remember which one it is. But the whole equal and opposite reaction thing, right? And I think that goes with this discussion about NIL and like who gets away with things and who doesn't, and who gets slapped on the wrist and who gets suspended. And, you know, you think of like there's just endless amounts of hypocrisy in the way punishment has been handed down over the years. To use Fitzgerald as an example, right? So it's uncovered by the student newspaper at Northwestern, by the way. Just bravo, hats off to the kids at NU for doing this and investigating it and talking to players and uncovering what was systemic in terms of abuse through hazing, where freshmen had to go through all kinds of inappropriate to traumatic hell over 25 years of this program, and the traditions were passed down because that's lovely. And they uncovered it, and once it saw the light of day, overdone, and Pat Fitzgerald either knew or didn't, and if he didn't, that's a problem, and if he did, that's probably a bigger problem, but both of them are huge issues. And initially, after this thorough investigation, allegedly, by the university, he's suspended for 2 weeks without pay, which I'm sure hurts because he makes millions of dollars, but comes not even during the season. Suspended for 2 weeks in the middle of the summer when the kids aren't even there. You then think back to, I don't know, Terrell Pryor back in the day. Suspended 5 games for getting tattoos for free? What? Make that make sense. And the possibilities are endless. Think of what it took for Bob Huggins to get run out of town in West Virginia. Think of the fact that Rick Pitino has a job after the stuff that he did and he allowed to happen at Louisville. And we hold up these college coaches as, oh, they develop young men. And they love to sell that stuff too, right? Oh, we're going to go into that young man's living room and we're going to look his mama in the eye and we're going to tell him we're going to take after him. We're going to take care of that kid, and, you know, you don't got to worry, ma'am. And then this stuff happens all the time. All the time. And these coaches get paid millions, and the kids get paid nothing. Now at least the kids can have some power. And what, of course, happens when power dynamics change? The group that has the power complains. And so now you see coaches being like, this NIL stuff, it's out of control. When that same coach moved 4 times in the last 5 years to 4 different schools because he was offered more money. Again, that's capitalism, baby. You love it when you're the person making more money. You hate it when you're losing talent. And I get it. This is why the NFL and the NBA have contracts and there's competitive balance rules. You can't just willy-nilly. Can you imagine if the whole league could just be free agents every summer? It'd be chaos. It'd be bad for the sport. But the problem is the people in charge of the sport, in this particular case, the NCAA, they don't want to actually make rules. They don't want to be in charge. They want Congress to regulate it. And that brings in people like Rand Paul, and that rewinds us to the last segment of why that's such a dumb idea and a terrible problem. But what it means is that you could have, with these power dynamics in place, 25 years of hazing that I'm sure some people listening are like, I saw worse than that. And you never said anything? You just went through it? It's tradition. Did you ever once sit back and think about the fact that you were getting made to do things that are probably actually technically illegal? Like anything of a sexual nature that you don't want to do is sexual assault. I don't say that lightly. I don't say that flippantly. I say that factually. And if you just, it's part of it. If you didn't want to do it, that's a hard no. That's not how that works. You can't do it. You can't make you do naked pull-ups. It's not funny. It's not a thing. It's not a joke. It's not hazy. Oh, you got to go through it to become a man. No, you don't. There's nothing on that. And that's the kind of stuff that was happening at Northwestern, on top of other bad stuff, for 25 years, and no one felt empowered to speak up. Why? because the coach was beloved. He made millions of dollars. And the players were largely replaceable. It's 100 people on a college football team. Next man up. And in a program like Northwestern, they got, it's one thing if like Tua Tagovailoa speaks up while he's at Alabama. Tua's not replaceable. Sure, Mac Jones came in the next year, but the drop-off in Tua college quarterback to Mac Jones was pretty significant. Not as significant as NFL Tua to NFL Mac Jones, but in college, it's still significant. They were still good. But even in Alabama, like, you're Julio Jones. It ain't like there's another Julio Jones. There's some other five-star kid. But that's kind of the thing. You just churn them. Whether you're Alabama five-star churning them, and occasionally you get someone who's super special, or you're Northwestern three-star churning them. There's another you. So if you speak up, rather than deal with the problem, they'll deal with you. And that's what we just saw at Northwestern. And it took a mass amount of people. It took outside pressure and outside eyes to hold light to something to ultimately end the problem. And this is why the more power that players get, the more even that playing field becomes, whether it's through direct payment, which is still on the table and still being litigated, or NIL, is good. Because if you're afraid that if you suck as a program and you treat players like commodities and inhumanely and abuse them in the name of hazing, that they're going to leave, you ain't going to have any players. Players talk. Reputations get around. And by the way, they get around a lot more when people transfer all the time. And when there's a heavy transfer out of a place, people look into that. So ultimately, the beauty of capitalism and the beauty of how a market regulates itself is supply and demand. There's only so many spots. And if you want the best of the best in terms of, and there's only so many good football players. And if you want your spots to be filled by the good football players or the good basketball players or the good baseball players, the good gymnasts, the good whatever, you better run a program where they're going to actually enjoy being there and want to stay. And not just stay, but be able to thrive and succeed, which is the other side of that coin of treating people well and developing them as people and as athletes. It all ties together. It's all about power. Always is, always will be. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube as we do each and every day at youtube.com/the-team or at the Team 980. And when we get back, Rick Mace of the Washington Post joins us. He was also on Capitol Hill today where the PGA Tour and Live Golf were under a microscope. And there were some big, gigantic revelations about how that agreement, if they'll even call it an agreement anymore, came together. That's next.
You can take the Team 980 with you anytime, anywhere.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are also streaming live on YouTube. Watch us each and every day, whole show, 4 to 7, on youtube.com/@theteam980. We did get a hilarious comment, by the way, Anthony, on the show yesterday, like on the full-length live stream. We're a 3-hour radio show every day. Someone commented, like, too long. I was like, you don't know what this is? What are we doing? I don't know. Whatever. Apropos of none of that, it's our pleasure now to welcome back to the show Rick Mace, sports features reporter for the Washington Post. He has been on Capitol Hill today, where we've spent a lot of time talking about multiple things already on the show, but Rick was talking or kind of taking in the hearings on the PGA Tour and Live Golf. And Rick, much appreciate your time. Welcome back to the show.
My pleasure, man. I promise not to be too long and ruffle any feathers over there.
I mean, I don't care if you ruffle feathers on Capitol Hill. If you're talking about us, like, look, Rick, let's be real. I'm going to be real with you. I'm going to be real with the audience. It's July 11th. One, I would talk on this no matter what, but I'm just going to put it this way. We got time today. So you be as thorough as you want to be, because there is a ton here. And that's actually kind of what I wanted to ask you first. Let's say from noon yesterday, as you're preparing to go to Capitol Hill today, eventually, and I can't remember whether it was last night or this morning, you get the document or the series of documents from the Senate committee that kind of lays out some of their evidence that they're going to discuss. Like, how does your perspective change before the hearing even starts, just based off that evidence of what you're about to witness, what you're about to hear, and what you think the big kind of talking points and important plot points are in this story?
I don't think my perspective changed, but it's illuminating, right? Because this whole deal between the Saudis and the PGA Tour, it's prompted nothing but questions, and there's been so few answers to these questions. So there was a trove of documents released early in the meeting today that actually didn't provide all the answers, but they at least told us how they got to the same table, what happened behind the scenes a little bit, some of the negotiations that took place, and there were some things that kind of opened your eyes a little bit. They discussed should Rory and Tiger Woods own live teams? Should they compete in live events? These are things that the Saudi PIF proposed. The PGA Tour wanted Greg Norman, booted from his position as CEO of the Live Tour. They talked about having a World Team Series event that would conclude in Saudi Arabia. So there's a lot of things like this that we just didn't know, because the basic framework agreement they reached. And again, this isn't the final agreement. This was kind of like the deal before the deal. It had so few details. So these documents actually showed some of the things they've been discussing behind the scenes, and we'll see if any of it's included in the final agreement going forward.
So I think for a lot of Sports Talk listeners, their biggest exposure, obviously a lot of folks listening in our neck of the woods, they might have been on Capitol Hill themselves because they worked in the government. Like, we're a weird market in that way because it's here. But, sports fan-wise, the biggest exposure was obviously the Commanders and everything with the toxic workplace being on Capitol Hill. And what a lot of people, I think, came to understand is the reason they have that hearing is so that they can eventually come up with some kind of rules, some kind of laws, some kind of guidelines to help prevent that kind of thing of happening in the future. If we scale all the way back to that, the highest view, why is Congress looking into this merger? Is there something they are trying to accomplish or something they are trying to prevent here?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question, and I think it's something that was posed by a few different senators today. Clearly, there's some senators, particularly some of the Republican members of the subcommittee, that say, hey, this is not worth Congress' time. We have other things to deal with. We shouldn't be meddling in the private business negotiations between these two parties. And, that's a reasonable perspective to have. But the other side says, hey, this is actually a matter of public interest. This is a game, a sport, an industry that a great deal of many of Americans care about. There's also, antitrust issues and things of that nature that are worth exploring. So it was definitely, talked about at length. So some Republicans, were clearly skeptical that this was even worth the time of Congress to delve into. But I would say two things that Congress can do here.
Yeah.
Well, number one is apply public pressure to the PGA Tour. They've not hammered out a final deal. And already, clearly the public, the pressure is working in some fashion. The PGA Tour was very clear that, it's a delicate situation. It's difficult for them to negotiate with all these eyeballs on them, with all this pressure on them from Congress. They kind of said that outright today. The other thing is the PGA Tour is a tax-exempt organization. That is something that is granted to them by federal law, and that is an issue that Congress can take up if they want. There are bills in Congress right now that are going to try to take that status away from them. And if Congress goes through these hearings and they come out the other end and say, hey, if they're going to take foreign money, we don't think they deserve this status anymore, that could be a very concrete, real result of these hearings and this investigation.
That all makes perfect sense to me. It seems all worthy. It's a major issue. Obviously, Rick Mace with us from the Washington Post to discuss. The other element of this that I wonder if came up at all today is, do they consider this, whether in a micro sense or a macro sense, a national security issue because of the fact that you're dealing with Saudi Arabia, and there's a lot. I'm going to put it this way: there's a very complex relationship between the U.S. and Saudi government on that front.
Yeah, it didn't really come up in the context of a national security issue. Clearly, people discussed today Saudi Arabia's history of alleged human rights abuses. It was something that both senators and the PGA Tour witnesses referenced at various points. And in the gallery today, there were family members of 9/11 victims right there. And what they want is they want the government, the Justice Department, FBI to be more forthcoming and transparent with what they know about Saudi Arabia's involvement with 9/11. So I wouldn't say it's the elephant in the room because it was right there in the middle and people, couldn't ignore it. But I wouldn't say anyone's thinking about this from a national security perspective as much as, hey, should American businesses, should an American institution that we care about, like professional golf, be in business with this foreign entity?
Yeah, I do wonder how far we are from some kind of congressional hearing on sports washing. It just feels like we got to be inching towards that at some point. But
well, I mean, and that's one of the themes that this addressed. I mean, right. China came up today. We heard about mentions of Qatar hosting the World Cup. I think this is almost just tip of the iceberg, and we're seeing where investment in sports going. We saw it here in D.C. with Monumental taking Qatari money. It's only going one direction right now, and I think this could be a tipping point that's forcing Congress's hand to actually delve into it and decide if they want to play a role here.
For sure. Rick Mace, Washington Post sports features reporter, covering the hearings today on Capitol Hill, PGA Tour, and Live Golf. All right, putting the politics of it aside, kind of diving into some of the substance here. Your colleague at the Post, Sally Jenkins, I think brought up a bunch of excellent points on Twitter today. But one of the ones that I thought was interesting was the PGA doing all this negotiating seemingly very privately, without, including hey, we want to give this thing to Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy, which would have been news to Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy. There are certain members of the board negotiating certain parts without other parts of the board. How much of just the exposure here could get the PGA, I guess, in trouble with itself, certain members of the PGA in trouble with how they operated in the making of this deal or this agreement?
Yeah, I mean, they're still very much in hot water with their own membership. They admitted today that not a single player knew about this deal as it was being negotiated. Only two policy board members, that's their top governing board, knew this deal was even in the works. And those are the two guys that were actually key in negotiating the deal. Those are huge problems for what's supposed to be a member-led organization. And we know for a fact that policy board members and players are still upset over that. So I think going forward, they are trying to address the concerns. They are saying they had to do this in secret because if it leaked out, the whole thing could have caved. It would have been jeopardized, and it never would have got to this point anyway. But that does not necessarily, appease all the people that felt blindsided and hurt. The tour had this sudden about face. So we'll see where it goes from here. They still have a big uphill battle ahead of them to convince both the policy board and the broader membership that this deal was necessary, that it was essential, and that is the thing that's going to, stabilize and perhaps save the world of professional golf.
So let's dive into that a little bit. What case did they make, not only in what was revealed in the documents, but on the stand today, about why they felt the need to make this deal? How did we even get here in the first place, where there was this giant about face from the Saudis starting this league, and they're appalled and can't believe it and are trying to fight to shut it down, to, hey, we've got an agreement where we're going to go forward holding hands together?
Yeah, well, I think Live Golf, they presented it as an existential threat. If you look at their PGA Tour's, tax documents, they have about like $1.5 billion in assets in their most recent filings. Well, the Saudi PIF has $700 billion on hand. So there's just a huge imbalance there on the money these two sites have to kind of do this legal fight. And so the PGA Tour finally hit a point where they realized, we can't keep going this direction. We're bleeding money in legal fees. There's no certainty at the end of it. And the Saudis can keep just pouring money into this and bleeding us dry and stealing, 5 to 10 golfers every year. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But that's what the PGA Tour's contention is. They had to make this deal to save themselves. And they feel like in doing that, they've kind of stabilized the sport.
So what's your opinion on that? Like, is that a valid argument, or are they BSing us here?
I mean, I let Sally Jenkins do most of the opinion.
She's a good one to let do that, in fairness.
She is. I would just say both sides on the surface looks like they've won something here. The Saudis have a seat at the table. The PGA Tour has escaped this expensive litigation and, at least tamp down the existential threat. We don't know what the cost to all that is. We don't know what it means to accept $1 billion in Saudi money. What are the Saudis going to ask 2 or 3 years from now? We don't know. And we don't know with the Saudis at the table what kind of demands they're going to make. So if the bigger question here is who's going to control the future of professional golf, I don't think anyone knows that for a while. The PGA Tour seems confident that they have the equity, that they have the majority of the seats on all these governing boards. That could be naive, and certainly there were some senators that thought that was naive. We'll just have to see how it all plays out if the deal gets finalized. And that's the big caveat to everything. This has been a deal before a deal, and we don't know if they're going to actually reach that final deal. We don't know if the PGA Tour Policy Board is going to approve it, and we certainly don't know if the Department of Justice is going to think that it's kosher and passes muster and doesn't violate federal antitrust law.
So that's where I'll end with you, Rick. Rick Mace, Washington Post, with us here on the Team 980. You're back again. This is probably more Sally's avenue than yours, but based off of your reporting, based off of understanding, the kind of the players here, based off of what you heard today, what is the path forward in, to sports talk radio it up? Let's ruffle some feathers. What percent do you give a deal getting done, and what does that deal look like?
I'm not going to give a percent, but I'll tell you, it is an uphill battle from here. There's still a lot of hurdles to clear. We know the policy board has concerns. One of the key members just resigned over the weekend, saying he had serious concerns over the whole thing. I know that he's not the only member of the board that feels that way. So even if they reach final terms with the Saudis, even if the policy board says, yeah, all 10 of us are on board, let's do this thing, then the Department of Justice is going to step in, and we already know they have concerns. The PGA Tour has violated federal laws about antitrust. So the whole thing with this deal, it only raises more red flags with justice. And I've talked to several people, both in justice and formerly with justice, and they see these red flags. The Clayton Act, the Sherman Act. I don't know how the tour is going to be able to totally justify it. But to be fair, until you see the final agreement, it's really hard for anyone to know.
Right. So I knew I was not going to get a percent out of you. I don't even know why I tried. I figured I was just throwing it out there. But I'll
give you Sally's cell number and she'll give you her percent.
That's all. Hey, Sally, one question interview. Like that would be a good use of time. Rick Mace, everybody. If you want more on this, of course, read his work in the Washington Post, WashingtonPost.com/sports. Rick, always appreciate it, man. Great to chat and have fun covering the rest of this mess. Oh, there we go. All right, Rick Mace, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. His phone had a hiccup there at the end. That was a little awkward, but what are you gonna do, Anthony? I think the Saudis are after us.
That's not good.
No, it would. If that was true, it wouldn't be good. I don't think the Saudis are after us. I think we're fine. I do hope. I don't know. There are times when I'm doing segments, especially like when sports and politics intersect, that I'm like, I hope someone on Capitol Hill is listening. That was a good idea. Someone should do that. People should listen to me. I have decent ideas once every 3 months. Don't let them go to waste. Self-deprecation keeps you going. All right. Do you want to do what's trending, or are we just going to... Is there anything trending?
There are some games tonight.
That's true. You know what we're just going to do instead of what's trending?
What?
We're just going to talk about those games next. It's Hoffman
You
Show.
can listen to the Team 980 on your smart speaker. Just
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube. Starting to percolate is the stream. Percolate. That's Anthony, that's a quality word. Percolate.
It's a pretty good word.
You're not
You
impressed.
don't hear it too often.
I know. Matriculate, percolate. Those are good ones. Also, behind your head right now, you have one of my favorite things ever, which is Tim Kirkchin, a gem of humanity. Right now, he's in a one shot. I'm just waiting for it to change. Yeah, who's the player next to him? I can't tell because I'm trying to watch through multiple screens / there's closed captioning over. Is that like Eduardo Perez?
I don't know who that is.
All I know is he's very tall. And I think Tim Kirkchin standing next to very tall baseball players is a very mean. And by the way, Carl Ravitch also on that set, not very tall. Putting them next to tall people on a standing set is a very mean thing that a producer did. Why did they do that? Sounds like a regular person standing next to Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah, not a good thing.
Not cool.
Not a good look.
Did you see the picture that went viral over the weekend? Cameron Brink and Kevin Hart.
Yep.
Hilarious.
6'4".
Rachel was like, "Can you imagine Kevin Hart standing next to Wemby? Imagine another foot."
Oh, man.
Kevin Hart's like at Victor Wembanyama's hip.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a bit somewhere in there of Kevin Hart just like having an argument with Victor Wembanyama's belly button.
That's absurd, man.
That's a commercial. That's like a Chase commercial waiting to happen. Because he does all those Chase commercials. Like, imagine Chase is a free. It's not free. I'm going to say it, but if you use it, you got to pay me. Because you got money, because you're a credit card company. That's how that works. Just Kevin Hart and Victor Wembanyama arguing over a check. And Kevin's just yelling at Victor's belly button. Or maybe it would work. He's yelling at his wallet because it's in his pants pocket, and that's as tall as Kevin Hart is on Victor Wembanyama.
That would be, I don't know.
You have concerns.
I don't know how that one will look.
I don't know. No Wemby tonight. Wizards. We haven't even said this yet. It's a Wizards game day, and we're going to talk to Dave Johnson next.
Does that mean we get to play the stinger?
This was a question I had in my head.
The imager?
Yeah. So we haven't obviously remade it yet. Like, Dave will have a new open next season. We'll have to see what the Wizards use for like a theme song for the season. Last year they did the very cool DJ Cool Let Me Clear My Throat remix. And so I used Let Me Clear My Throat to make Dave's opener. So we got to see what like the theme song is for the season. I'm definitely okay to use the old one. We just are going to acknowledge now that it's going to have some play-by-play from Dave for some players that are no longer here.
Yep, that's exactly what I was just thinking.
I know he's got the, oh, Kyle Kuzma in there, but there's also definitely some Beal clips.
Yeah, Bill, yeah.
So, you know what? Maybe we ask Dave. Do we ask him on the air, or do you ask him when you call him in the break?
I think I'll ask him when I call him in the break. I don't want to put too much pressure on him. I feel like when you put pressure on people in the midst of a conversation, they might, more than likely, they'll end up agreeing. So I think if he has like a couple of minutes to, process it, then he'll have his final answer.
But I also feel like it's a I don't know. Dave would handle it well. That means
yeah, he would.
The pressure of, do we play your open with the old play-by-play in it? That's nothing to Dave Johnson.
Yeah.
He's Dave Johnson. He's going to join us at the top of the hour. Also tonight, let's see. You got that one. You got the All-Star game. You got Mystics Storm. What are you watching tonight?
So I'm looking at these games. You got Brooklyn, Milwaukee. I really wish Scoot was playing. I definitely would have wanted to see Portland versus Brandon Miller and Charlotte. I
feel like Scoot would have gone hard on that one.
Yeah, I think so too.
But if they want to shut him down for the rest of the summer, I get it. That dude is.
Yeah, I wouldn't put him back out there. He showed me more than enough.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, he's so good.
I don't know what I'm watching. To be honest, I know I'm not staying up to watch the Wizards. I thought I was.
What time is that? Is that
10:30?
Yeah, we ain't watching that.
Usually I stay up late, but I've been getting in the rhythm of waking up early and working out.
What's early to you? How early do you wake up?
So now I'm waking up at like 6:40, 6:45.
Okay, that's legit. Before 7's legit.
That's because usually I used to wake up at 8, get to the gym at 8:15.
I can't. Outside of battling jet lag, I can't tell you the last time my body let me sleep till 8.
Oh, you're missing out.
You're telling me. And like I don't wake up tired.
Yeah.
We roll out of bed. We're like, we're zombies going to our coffee in the kitchen.
Yes, I don't know when I'm going to watch.
I'm super bummed that Wizards game is not on till late. Because the Wizards Summer League team is pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, they are. I don't know. I mean, I'll probably get a look at some of the rookies. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. So maybe some Summer League.
Yeah.
Mystics are at 7. Could definitely watch that.
Is Tasha back? I know she was dealing with like an ankle injury.
I don't know. I know Elena's out for 2 weeks.
She
re-injured that ankle. Mystics are not having a good time. I mean, they're
this
they're
always seems to happen to us.
I think they're still fourth in the league. So like, it's not like they're having a bad year. They're just not having a good time while having a okay year.
It's always health with us.
Mostly. There's some other things too.
Yeah, that too.
You're not the Aces. That's going to be the problem this year. You're just not the Aces.
Did you put your future in?
I should have put bet on the Aces.
I was about to say you definitely should have.
I honestly, part of the reason I didn't even look at it was just like, the odds aren't going to be that good. What am I going to do? Bet 20 to win 25?
hey, $25 is, $25 more than you have right now.
That's a great point. It's also how you wind up needing those gambling hotlines at the end of the ads.
If you have a gambling problem.
Yes. By the way, I don't know if I should say this. I'm just going to say it. We got to figure out a better system. Every podcast I listen to now is doing gambling ads, and we should promote the resources available. I'm not anti helping people with a potential gambling addiction. But we got to come up with like a consolidated website for gambling resources in your state. Visit website.com/gambling. Because the disclaimers are, because of the legal restrictions, are longer than the bleeping ads. It's not ideal. That's all I'm going to say. We got to, as an industry, along with the folks on there's your Capitol Hill tie for the entire first hour. Us and the folks in the various legislative bodies around the country, we got to figure that out for the good of the listeners of podcasts everywhere. Okay, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, the one, the only voice of the Washington Wizards on this very radio station, Dave Johnson joins us to talk about the Summer Wizards and the moves for Kuzma and Poole.
it, provided some drama because we did not expect Bilal Coulibaly to be a part of the Wizards' plans because there was no way really to predict what they were thinking. But it was definitely an example of or a strong statement of where this team was. Look, we're not going to try to solve this in 2 hours or tonight or in one season, but get ready. We're building for the future. And by saying building for the future, they want to build for sustained success. And that's, quite frankly, what we've struggled to have and not always been lucky. You'll get 3 or 4 seasons straight in the playoffs and then get stuck in a cul-de-sac. So what this town wants, what this town needs, what this team needs is to have a good decade. Let's have a good decade. Let's start there. And to get that kind of long run in the NBA, you have to have the building blocks in place.
No doubt. And so that brings us to the young vets and the guys that are going to lead this team at the very least for the next year in Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma. To me, if nothing else, Dave, I have no idea if they're going to win games. In fact, if you told me to make a prediction, do they win 40 games next year? Probably not. That's not where they are in this stage. And, for once, as opposed to the previous years where that was, the floor of the goal, that's okay if they don't, as far as I'm concerned. But I do think they're going to be fun. What sense do you get being around the team and around the organization of just kind of the energy that you mentioned that already with the front office guys, but that these young players, specifically re-signing Kyle and what you know of him and what you have heard from around the league about Jordan Poole?
Well, first of all, you talked about Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole. So then you've got 2 guys with championship experience and pedigree. Kuzma, obviously, with the Lakers. And that cannot be, overlooked or understated to have that kind of experience because you do learn what it takes to win. You do learn that you need to accept certain roles at different times, which Kyle Kuzma certainly did in Los Angeles, and now he's done with the Washington Wizards. The Kuzma re-signing, I knew he liked it here. It was a smart business decision to opt out. Also, again, with the way that the salary cap works as you go to rebuild, you've got to spend 90% of your salary cap. So you can't just, throw out a G League team for a season and win 10 games and then, guarantee yourself to the top draft pick next year. That's not the way it works. You need also, it's not going to help players develop if that's the case. So this team going forward is a nice mix when you have a Kyle Kuzma leading the way. He was a very unselfish player, by the way, but also a player that wants and can take as we played the Dave Johnson intro 1.0. That was Kyle Kuzma hitting a game winner. Right. He's not afraid of the big moment, and it's the same situation with Jordan Poole. I just think this is going to be. What's going to make this fun is for just like Kuzma, and you saw his ascendancy with the Wizards. Jordan Poole, it's going to be the same situation for him. There's more of an opportunity to really, expand your wings, if you will. And so I think that's why you're going to have a collection of players, and it's a mix of guys that like Poole and Kuzma say, all right, this is my time to be a leader, to flex my muscles, and young guys that say, all right, I've got a real chance here. I'm not behind somebody that is irreplaceable. I can make a name for myself. I can stay in the NBA. So I think people will enjoy watching guys night in and night out. They're not going to take nights off because if you're Patrick Baldwin or Ryan Rollins or whoever, you're going to steal somebody's lunch money if you have to. You want to stay in the NBA. I think, as you understand, we all understand, but you really have to crystallize it. There's only 500 of these jobs in the entire world, and it's a great gig, and it pays well, but it's not easy to stick and stay for a long period of time because, guess what? There's another class coming out every year that wants your job. So, as we're in the radio business, where long-term security is when you get a guest parking permit, we appreciate people that are hungry and going to try to give it night in and night out.
I'm still working on the parking. That's where I'm at. But so I just take the Metro most of the days. Dave Johnson, play-by-play voice of the Wizards, with us here on the Team 980. So one guy that perhaps fits that bill as much as anybody in terms of hungry, needs to prove his place is Johnny Davis. What have you made of his growth, not only end of last year, but specifically what you've seen so far in Vegas this summer?
Well, I think that I think about just last year where really, let's face it, he had a miserable time at Summer League. And, you know, we were kind of, frankly, mumbling to ourselves like, you know, is he okay, or is he battling through an injury, or, you know, this is not the Johnny Davis we saw in college, and this is not the Johnny Davis we expected. And then it spilled into training camp, and you know, just an incredibly difficult time, quite frankly, because and it had to be, when I say a difficult time for him, I mean, he had the pressure of being the 10th overall pick. But to his credit, you know, he started the show really the last month of the regular season. Okay, we're seeing it now, and you know, again, remember his defense was a strong point, and he's not someone that's easy to beat off the dribble. What he was lacking when he came here, he just wasn't looking for a shot. He looked early, and I'm talking about early in the season. He just looked timid and out of place, quite frankly. And now, to his credit, he's fought through that, because he's not. You know, these guys are smart. They know they're elite players. They know when their game is not their game, and he clearly had to be wondering what is going on. And it's not easy to fix things in the NBA or any professional sport for that matter, because things are going at 100 miles an hour. So Johnny Davis is giving us real encouragement that he's just, you know, steady play. I think about the other night, he had 17 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals against the Celtics. I mean, that's, you know, you'd like to see those numbers. And if, you know, he's got a couple more games here. We've got a couple more games here in Summer League. If he just be consistent, it doesn't have to be spectacular. Let's just get out of the Summer League saying, all right, this is a guy that has something to build on, and that'll carry into training camp.
Yeah, it's going to be really fascinating to me, Dave, how that 2-guard spot, and really it's kind of the 2-3. Everyone, it's positionless now, but, you know, at the end of the day, like, you still got to guard someone. So depending on who you're playing and what size those guys are will depend on how many of the Corey Kisperts, the Johnny Davises, the Jordan Pooles, the Tyus Joneses, you know, on up the list in terms of height are on the floor at once. But it's going to be pretty fascinating to see. And the one guy who got, to me, is almost forgotten in this mix, because Poole is the headliner, Davis is the first rounder, Coulibaly is the other first rounder, who's somewhere between a 2, 3, and 4, depending on how many more growth spurts that he has between now and the start of the season. You know, Kyle, obviously, in that wing mix, is Tyus Jones, a true point guard for sure, but a guy who could have a fairly sizable impact for them this year. What do you make of that acquisition in terms of what it means this year, or even kind of the culture they want to set long term?
Well, and again, that what we were just talking about is the NBA is fitting opportunity. And Tyus Jones, if I'm Tyus Jones, I'm thinking, you know, this is my opportunity. You know, he's waiting, been waiting for this, you know, to become a starting point guard. I mean, he backed up Jeff Teague in Minnesota, and of course Ja Morant in Memphis. So if you're Tyus Jones, I have to believe he's really excited to be coming to the Washington Wizards, because all right, here it is. It's my chance. And again, when I just described it, when you're playing 6 seasons of your NBA career, and you're you know, backing up a Jeff Teague, backing up a Tyus, backing up a Ja Morant, you know, an NBA career may only be 10 or 12 seasons. So already, you know, half of your potential NBA career has been in a role that is not what you wanted. You know, everybody here wants to be the guy, because they were the guy, they were the man. So I think it's a great point that you point out that Tyus Jones is a shining example of why you're going to want to watch these Wizards this season, and listen to him, we hope, as well, because he's going to come into this season and say, all right, this is it. This is my chance. I waited. I played basketball all my life. I went through, you know, I did everything right. I got into the NBA. I waited 6 seasons for an opportunity like that. I mean, think of it. That's a long time. That's a lot of games. That's a lot of sweat. Now you got your chance.
Yeah. No, that's incredible perspective too. I love what you said about how it's, halfway through your career. And if you get 10 years in the league, like, you had a heck of a career no matter what you did. So that's really good perspective. Dave Johnson with us for a few more minutes here on the Hoffman Show. Of course, the play-by-play voice of the Wizards. But Dave, I want to switch gears on you real quick, because when we call games together and we're talking in the commercial breaks or talking before and after, we often wind up talking soccer, and we talk about how, what's the growth of the game? What's the trajectory specifically for American soccer? And I think most people know you're also the voice of DC United on TV for 25 years, now on radio. And this weekend is going to be one of the most monumental weekends, if not the single biggest inflection point that the league has had since it started, with Lionel Messi being introduced for Inter Miami. And I'm curious, from your seat as someone who loves the sport and loves specifically the league, what does this mean for you, for the game?
Well, it just, to me, it's an emotional time, because, like, from my perspective, as you mentioned, I've been with DC United since the beginning, and there was a time we didn't think the league would last, and the league started in 1996, so there was a time when there was not a major league soccer in this country. So I remember the David Beckham, when he arrived, and it was after he just won a championship with Real Madrid. So he was not coming over with a broken leg and couldn't play anymore. He was coming for his retirement. And I still remember the way that was covered. I remember the way they had, it was in Los Angeles, and they had an aerial shot of the stadium, just like they did for Monday Night Football or whatever. And I'm thinking, wow, this is a big step for the league. And really, his arrival, triggered so much in terms of growth, in terms of investors continuing to come in terms of players. When he came in, I think there was like 13 or 14 teams. Now there's 30. So the league has doubled. And now it's the same thing with Messi as I'm seeing on Twitter. I mean, there's video of his private plane arriving in Florida, and the excitement. People say, "Oh, he's really here. He's touched down on American soil," and he is again coming over here while he has some miles on his tires, so to speak. He just won a World Cup with Argentina, so it's not like he doesn't know how to play, and he will not, and he will excite fans, because that's, these guys like Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, and all athletes, you almost don't look at their age anymore because of the sports science, and guys like Messi and Ronaldo, they've taken care of their bodies so well, they're still bringing it and still electrifying. It became a Twitter sensation, a move he did in a friendly for Argentina when they played Australia in an exhibition game just a couple months ago in China. So, this is where it's going to help and where it is needed. The game is growing. We have a World Cup coming here in 2026. You have a league with just about every team has its own stadium. So we're talking billions of dollars have been committed by people. So it's not, is soccer here or going to make it? It's here, and it's staying, and it's permanently staying. There's roots here. But we're also a country where we're used to, think about it, the NHL, NBA, NFL, baseball, obviously, where we have the best. We have the best. Major League Soccer is not the best league in the world, but, that's always a big debate in soccer because, more than one country, plays it at a very high level. And so, quite frankly, I didn't ever think we would be able to pull off a situation where a Messi comes here, and it's going to be it's just going to be a big firework. What already is a lot of excitement, quite frankly, leading up to the World Cup.
Yeah, no, the World Cup in 26 and Messi being here is incredible. And that's also not coincidence. He wants to, I think, be able to train easier with Argentina, and they're going to be building like kind of a Argentina North training facility in Miami. That's all intentional. But I want to go back to the second to last part that you said there, Dave, which is where the MLS ranks in the world. I just was Googling as you were answering that question. This is the best I got. GlobalFootballRankings.com. They've got MLS as the 16th best league in the world, and that's behind the second tier in England, the second tier in Germany. The Denmark, their top division, Brazil's top division. Do you think that Messi and the other people that are going to come with him And the kind of simultaneous rise of talent in the American youth ranks can ultimately raise MLS higher, and let's say a decade from now that it is a top 10 global football league. Is that in play here?
No, that's definitely in play. And actually, I'd never heard of that website. I'm not saying they're wrong or their methodology is wrong, but I believe it's a top 10 league right now. And the evidence of how we're seeing them when Major League Soccer teams go up against some of the Mexican teams that I don't know where they rank Mexico. That website you just referenced, but those are
they've got Liga MX 9th.
Okay, well, again, I think we are definitely on par with Mexico. Look, I mean, when you were talking about it's the big four, big five, the Germany's, England, Italy, France. Those are your big ones right out of the gate, and then Brazil and Argentina, could probably form three leagues. But the point being is if you look at who's coming over here, the amount of money that's being spent, and it is what makes soccer exciting or football exciting, whatever you want to call it. It is. You're not in a vacuum. You live in this competitive situation where, as a player becomes available, you're competing with not just other teams in Major League Soccer, but also with the rest of the world. And again, Saudi Arabia is now. You've heard the story, spending a lot of money as they're trying to.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, that is an understatement. They're like spending. I can't even describe what they're spending on players. I mean,
right.
Cristiano Ronaldo could form his own country now with the money he has, but. I disagree that they're 16th. I disagree that we're behind Denmark or the and again their methodology. Who knows how they come up with that?
Sure.
Because there's not been a lot of head-to-head games, but I think this league definitely will be, and you could argue now it's already a top 10 league.
That's good perspective, Dave. Always appreciate your time, sir. Enjoy the rest of Summer League. Rest up. We got to get those vocal cords ready to go to call some Jordan Poole action so we can make the Dave Johnson Open 2.0 next year.
I'm looking for 2.0, and I appreciate 1.0, and I appreciate the invitations because the invitations are better than anything I could ever do.
We're welcome to have you. Look, if you want to talk about whatever, Dave, especially these next couple of weeks in the middle of July, you know how barren the sports landscape is. You just give us a call, man. We're happy to have you.
No, well, we can talk about a lot of things. So,
okay.
Yeah, we'll do that.
That sounds good. We should just do a nonsense show. That could be fun. Anthony, write that down. All right. Dave Johnson, everybody. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Dave Johnson with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, speaking of global sports, one of the biggest stars in one of the biggest sports in the world who didn't have a job has one again. We'll explain next.
DC
Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube too, youtube.com/@theteam980. Our pleasure to welcome back to the show Madeline Coleman, covers Formula One for The Athletic. Madeline, 2 times in 2 weeks. A lot going on in your world.
I know, it's a busy part of the season, but I'm happy to be back. Nice to see you, Craig.
Thank you. You as well. So, the big news, it kind of was weird because it felt like I was in an episode of Drive to Survive this morning. Like they had the little tweet sound effect that goes off in the show, and everyone's like, oh my God. And this morning, the big news, Daniel Ricciardo is back in. He has a seat. One of the most popular drivers on the planet, certainly someone who's very well known from Drive to Survive for those that have become fans of the sport through that show. But he goes to AlphaTauri. Nick DeVries out. How rare is this to happen in the middle of a season?
So it's been a few years since we've actually seen it. The most recent one that I can recall off the top of my head was Alex Albon replacing Pierre Gasly at Red Bull, actually, back in, I believe, 2019. It was halfway point of the season before, I think it was for the Belgian Grand Prix, oddly enough, since that race is in 2 weeks.
Yep. Yeah, so hasn't happened very often. And this one's kind of a unique one because the relationship between Red Bull and AlphaTauri. Can you kind of explain that relationship and how that potentially impacted Ricciardo's ability to be the next man up for this seat?
Yeah, so the relationship between AlphaTauri and Red Bull is an interesting one. They're both owned by Red Bull, the energy drink company. So in a way, AlphaTauri is it's been best described as a sister team almost. They're both their own separate teams. They have their own separate drivers, but a lot of times you'll see Red Bull juniors come through the works. And so like Alex Albon and Pierre Gasly, they were both part of the Red Bull kind of family. And so you'll see them typically go AlphaTauri, it used to be known as Toro Rosso before that, and then go up to Red Bull. And so I think part of being back in the Red Bull family and Red Bull being able to see, how Daniel was doing, how he was able to progress from his days at McLaren to now where he is today, that probably did help to some extent.
Yeah, so he's kind of under this wing. And is it something that, does AlphaTauri make this decision? Does Red Bull make this decision? Who's saying, hey, Nick DeVries, you got to go, and it's Ricciardo that's in? Or is it some collaboration between the two teams?
I think it's a little bit of a collaboration, but then also it comes down to, Christian Horner and Helmut Marko. Helmut's been pretty vocal within recent weeks about what they felt and what they thought about Nick DeVries' performance, and even about how Christian Horner wasn't a fan. Helmut Marko was. Franz Tost wanted. Mick Schumacher, I believe, was his pick for who he had his eye on for the seat. And so it's kind of a little bit more of a little bit of a collaboration, because it is at the end of the day 2 separate teams, even though they are owned by the same parent company.
Madeline Coleman covers Formula One for The Athletic, helps write their newsletter, The Pit Lane, which you can get to your inbox multiple times a week. Here for Not My Beat again today on the Hoffman Show. So there's also kind of this parallel narrative / parallel reality about Sergio Perez, the other driver at Red Bull. Max Verstappen is dominating Formula One. Look, Lewis Hamilton won, 7 straight? And nothing that Lewis did was touching what Max has done right now. I actually saw a stat the other day. It might have been in y'all's newsletter that he could not win a race for the rest of the season. If he just finishes second for the rest of the season, he still wins the Drivers' Championship. And he, I think, has enough points that he would also be in first place or top 3 in the constructors on his own. It's insane what Verstappen is doing. So obviously the car is tremendous. The other driver, though, Sergio Perez at Red Bull, is struggling a bit, has really struggled specifically in qualifying, even if he's made up some places in races. How much does Checo's struggles impact the desire to potentially get Ricciardo in a car and see what he could potentially do to potentially even replace Checo next year?
I think it would be a wait-and-see type scenario. I remember seeing somewhere on Twitter today that a few sources were telling another F1 journalist that, his time today at Silverstone, they were doing the tire testing for next year, and he was in the RB19, that the time was pretty eye-catching. So I think Sergio's seat, there's going to be more pressure. However, Christian Horner's been pretty vocal and supportive about Sergio up until this point. So it's a little bit more wait-and-see, but the pressure's definitely there. But Sergio is under contract until 2024.
Are those are Formula One contracts hard and fast? I mean, obviously Nick DeVries was under contract, so I guess there are outs. But how rare is it? How possible is it for them, if Sergio were to continue to struggle, to be like, no, we're going to make a change before your contract is up? I guess they just pay him?
Basically a buyout. So McLaren and Daniel Ricciardo, that's a good example that there was a buyout involved there, and he got paid millions of dollars to basically end his contract early because he was supposed to be still in the McLaren seat this season. And so there's always typically outs. Sometimes they'll be a little bit tighter than others, but without knowing what Sergio's contract is, there's always some type of wiggle room. It just kind of boils down to what both sides want, what's the best case scenario.
Yeah, there's definitely plenty of money to do the buyout. That is the nature of the sport. Again, Madeline Coleman with us, covers F1 for The Athletic. So what is reasonable to expect from Ricciardo? Like, his form apparently was great in this tire test, but he hasn't driven in a long time. At McLaren, he really struggled. He's driving a not very good car. What's reasonable to expect from Daniel Ricciardo?
That's definitely putting it nicely. The AlphaTauri car is not great. That's not a secret. Even Franz came out saying that he basically didn't trust his engineers earlier this season. That's good
for morale.
Yeah, that's just how bad it was. Granted, that came several rounds ago, so it's been a couple months. But, at best, he'll be scoring points. We've seen that Yuki's pretty close to it, that he gets, close to the cusp of, P11, or he'll get up into the points with P10. So, at best, he'll be scoring points, but at least he can prove himself, and it's a lot better than him being on the sidelines. So there's a big difference between the AlphaTauri car versus the RB19, but knowing that he still has the ability to drive the F1 car and is still doing well, that's at least a reason for hope.
For sure. As far as kind of what this means around Formula One, I'm sure the producers of Drive to Survive are psyched. But what has been the reaction around the F1 world this morning? Other drivers, journalists, what's been the reaction to Daniel Ricciardo's return?
As far as journalists go, I think it's a little bit of a surprise. He's always great. He's always been very kind from my interactions with him. But to see Nick out after 10 races when we've got a very long schedule to go, this is going to go all the way, the season goes until Thanksgiving. So we've got quite a bit chunk of the season left, and summer break is still 2 races away. So for Nick to already be out during his first season, that was a little bit of a surprise, at least to me and some other people that I've been talking to, because at least you would think the switch might come during summer break if it did become kind of like a panic button type scenario where we absolutely need to switch them out. Because at the end of the day, this was still Nick's rookie season. Yes, he came in as a champion and from other series and everything, but there's still a learning curve that needs to be considered here.
Yeah. And if you want more on DeVries, I know, Madeline, you wrote about him, so you can read that at The Athletic. Wrapping up here with Madeline Coleman again from The Athletic with us, talking a little F1. The big news today, Daniel Ricciardo back in a seat for AlphaTauri. We talked about this a little bit, but how does this affect the driver lineup for next year? How many seats are open? Obviously, DeVries now available. Ricciardo's going to have a half a season under his belt. What do you think this means moving forward?
He was a big domino to fall, to be honest. That was a pretty big move to happen, and much earlier than I think anyone was really expecting, especially in the context of silly season, because that was chaotic last year, and it'll probably be a little bit more chaotic, more so this year and next year. The question mark basically is whether he stays on, or if Sergio's struggles continue, is he going to go in and fill in that Red Bull seat? Is he going to end up leaving, the Red Bull family again like he did within the last few years? I think it's probably going to be more of maybe a next season thing, but it also depends with how long this season is. Could we have another scenario there?
Yeah, I wonder if his agent was already having conversations with people and how that changes now that he'll have actual race results. Then there's this fun hypothetical to kick around, Madeline, which is, what if he never leaves in the first place? Because in 2019, he has a pretty good year with Red Bull. I think that's the year he wins in Monaco. But it's pretty clear, Max is coming. He's going to be the number one guy. Daniel wants to go somewhere else. He goes to Renault. That turns into a disaster because it just doesn't go as well. And then he leaves when they finally start to catch their stride towards the end of the year. He goes to McLaren. That absolutely bombs. But if he just kind of does the safe thing, doesn't take the leap, and that's kind of a famous moment in Drive to Survive, the way they chronicled it. They overlay, for those that haven't seen the show, he's talking about his decision to leave. They overlay it with him literally jumping off a cliff into the ocean and taking the leap. So it's beautiful cinematography. Good job, Netflix. If he never takes that leap, though, what are we talking about today? Like, is he someone who's been Max's teammate, winning races every once in a while the last couple of years? Does he have bad couple of years anyway? Like, what's your best guess?
My best guess is that he probably would have been winning every so often. I think there's no denying how strong Max is. He's an incredibly talented driver. He's only continued to grow. And it makes sense him being Red Bull's number one, regardless of who the teammate is. And that's no knock to Daniel's talent, because he is a strong driver at the end of the day. My personal opinion, I feel that he shouldn't have left Red Bull. Granted, I understand taking the bet on yourself and wanting to try to figure out what would be the best option. Sometimes you need to leave to realize how good of an opportunity that you have. But then you also have like the case of Pierre Gasly taking the bet on himself, leaving the Red Bull family for the first time, and what he's doing over at Alpine. Granted, Alpine's having their own struggles and everything, but I think in an alternate world, then he would have been winning every so often. I think he would have continued to excel because, as you said, it's not like he was doing poorly at Red Bull. It's just a matter of that he had this young talent coming up that looked destined to be number one.
Yeah. You mentioned Gasly, and I just got mad again on his behalf for Stroll hitting him this weekend. Madeline Coleman with us talking F1. You can read her work in The Athletic. Her and her colleagues doing a great job covering all angles of this news. Madeline, thanks so much for doing this, and I'm sure we'll be talking again as silly season continues these next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Thanks, Craig.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980.
We stumbled across something fun yesterday, Anthony. I wanna keep doing this. Just pick a different division every day over the next couple of weeks. We did yesterday the NFC East. Who was the best player of the 21st century? And it started with a tweet we saw from Chris Sims, so he might be doing this series as well. I'll just have to shout him out every day because if he's doing this as a series, we're stealing your idea. And welcome to sports radio. And if not, we're just growing on the fact that you were doing this for the Commanders. So sorry / you're welcome, Chris. But I think it's a fun exercise for every team. And so as we were doing it for the Commanders, we're like, well, okay, well, what about the rest of the NFC East? And now we're like, okay, well, what about the rest of the league? So AFC East, Anthony, is our division today. Who's the best player of the 21st century, so in the 2000s, for each of the following teams? Jets, Bills, Dolphins, Patriots. One is the easiest answer in the history of the sport. The Patriots are Tom Brady. End of story. He's almost played the entire 21st century there. He literally played like a fifth of it. Like when we're done with it in the year 2100, he will have played a fifth of it. It's insane. Longevity, excellence, those are the two factors. Nobody can touch him on certainly the combination. No one can touch him on longevity in 50 years in the league. And few can touch the excellence. So, okay, case closed. What about the Jets?
The Jets. Are you talking about the Jets? Go Jets. Those guys?
No, it's Jets, Jets.
Oh, dang.
My entire family just disowned you.
Oh.
My entire family of Jets fans, every cousin I have, just took whatever thoughts they had that were positive from you listening to the show and flushed them down the toilet.
So who did I mix?
The
Which
good news,
can did I mix?
I don't know, but you know what else is in the toilet? The hopes and dreams of most Jets fans, so it's fine. So the name that I think pops to me the most is Curtis Martin.
Ooh.
Hall of Fame running back. I just got to double check the years, though. Did most of his success come in the 90s? I feel like it was the 2000s.
Let me see.
It's that or you're going to have to find, well, I guess there's one other guy that I would consider. And actually, the other guy's probably the right answer. The Jets, so he got to the Jets in 98. So that does put a little bit of damper on it. But it was 5 years with the Jets in the 2000s. AP, second team once, couple of Pro Bowls, first team All AP in 2004. He was awesome. But he did have it probably, I don't know, I wouldn't say his best year. His best year was the second to last year he played. He rushed for almost 1,700 yards, 1,697. He rushed for 1,500 in 2001, 1,300 in 2003. He did have like 1,400 yard seasons in 98, 99. As a rookie, he rushed for almost 1,500, but that was with New England. I think that the correct answer, though, is Darrelle Revis.
Yes. I was waiting for you to say that. And I'm not even going to lie. I know who Curtis Martin is, but I think Jets, and I really can't think of many good Jets players just because of how bad they've been.
They've been painfully mediocre to tremendously bad. And through that, Darrelle Revis was awesome.
Yes.
Revis is the right answer. I don't know why I blanked on Revis.
Not even close.
Revis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-time Pro Bowler. He was the undisputed best at his position for, I don't know, from 2008 to 2014.
He was a Pro Bowler in 15 too.
He was, but by that point, he didn't make
guy.
AP first team All Pro.
Yeah.
So at that point, you've got at least some competition. There were guys like Nnamdi Asomugha that came and went, but like Revis was that dude.
Yeah.
He finished second Defensive Player of the Year in 2009 as a corner. 31 passes defended.
I think 2014 the year where he was limiting like all the top receivers to like 20 yards, 15 yards. Like he had a stretch where like he played 9 straight games and the top receivers in the league had like 2 receptions for 25 yards.
Well, it's funny. So, like,
insane.
2009, he has
that might be the year.
31 pass breakups, 6 picks. 2010, he's first team All-Pro, but he has no picks and only 10 passes defended because no one even bothered throwing at him. That's how good he was in 2010. Like, no one was open. So Revis is the correct answer for the Jets. So
Yep.
Brady, Revis. All right. We got Dolphins and Bills. Dolphins is tough, man. I'm going to say it's probably Zach Thomas.
Oh, you're going Zach? Okay. You can go Zach. I'm going to make case for another guy.
It's hard, though, because like his career starts in the late 90s. Some of his good years, I mean, he was good from the start. He was second in Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's third in Defensive Player of the Year in 98. He's a Pro Bowler and first-team All-Pro from 98 through, or he's either one or the other every year but one to 2006. Who's your guy, though?
I'm going Jason Taylor.
That's a great call.
Yes, sir.
They were kind of equal, right? They were both phenomenal Hall of Fame players at their positions. My question is, did one success come more in the 2000s and one more in the 90s? Taylor played longer.
He did.
But like he had the 1 year in Washington in 08, goes back to Miami.
Mm-hmm.
He was Defensive Player of the Year in 2006.
Yep.
I think Taylor probably gets the edge, barely, but gets it. 18 and a half sacks in 02. There's just more years than the 2000s.
Yeah.
I think that's a tiebreaker.
That's fair. That's fair.
Okay. And that leaves the Bills. Is it Josh Allen? Is he currently on the team?
Personally, I think so, Craig.
Certainly in terms of winning. But, I mean, they had some good guys in various, I know I'm missing, who was Doug Flutie playing with? It's not, Flutie wasn't the guy, but in terms of like players that he played with, let's see. If you go back, I mean, it really is pretty uninspiring. Marshawn Lynch had a couple of really good years, but like he's famous for what he did in Seattle. Drew Bledsoe had a couple good years. Like Eric Moulds was awesome for a long time. You know, Travis Henry had a couple of good years. Takeo Spikes was awesome, and his neck roll was almost as big as his neck.
Yeah, but he also was with it. I don't know. I guess we don't lean him.
But there's just like no sustained excellence
in Buffalo.
Where Josh Allen has been awesome the last 3 years. And we're also projecting that he's going to continue to be awesome moving forward. But, I mean, the best quarterback prior to that was Fitzpatrick, Flutie, Bledsoe.
It's not much to go off of.
Yeah, man. It's not good. It's not good. Fred Taylor, Tyrod Taylor. Now, Fred Taylor played in
Jacksonville.
Tyrod Taylor.
He had like 1 or 2 good seasons. Took them to the playoffs, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will definitely have to go Josh Allen. No question.
What division do you want to do tomorrow? Is that NFC East, AFC East? What do you want to do tomorrow?
Tomorrow's Wednesday. Let's go with team in the West.
Okay, AFC or NFC?
Let's go with the NFC just because we did NFC yesterday, AFC today.
All right, so we got NFC West, and then we'll do AFC. I'm just putting this in our rundown sheet so we don't forget. AFC West on Thursday, and then we'll see what we want to do on Friday.
Yes, sir.
Maybe we'll let Yates choose on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just get him in on it. Bamboozle him. Actually, no. If I don't text him beforehand, he gets very upset. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, take command. It's Take Command Tuesday, so you get to hear from me and Logan next. the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. Program alert. Actually, I got a couple program alerts. Anthony, you don't even know about these. Actually, you know about one of them. Take command program alert. Tomorrow morning, we are talking with Jordan Rodrigue, host of the new show, The Playmakers, The Play Callers. I'm going to do that 1,000 times. And because this is live radio, I can't correct myself. On the podcast, I just will do it and we'll delete it. The Play Callers. It is a new podcast series, 5 parts from The Athletic. Jordan, who covers the Rams for The Athletic and is just an absolute football lover, one of the smartest journalists in the business, sat down with Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel, Matt LaFleur, Kevin O'Connell, on down the list. But the first 4 are the guys that she mainly focuses on. The series is ridiculous. It's so good. I'm almost all the way done with it. And I am so excited to talk to her about it. And what I think is really interesting about this interview is she has done a lot of press and a lot of interviews around it. I don't know how many times she has actually talked to someone who was on the team in 2012 about the podcast series. She did talk to Robert as well, Robert Griffin, in the series. But we're talking to Jordan tomorrow on Take Command. We're going to play probably a lot of that for you here on the radio as well. But you definitely do not want to miss the full episode. So subscribe to Take Command anywhere you get your podcast. Also, we have been told by the Wizards that we are going to talk to one Johnny Davis later in this week. So I believe Thursday is the day for that. Yeah. So
That's great work.
That's the one you don't know about yet, Anthony, but you do now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Johnny Davis on Thursday. So that's pretty cool. They have practice, and then we're going to talk to him after practice. Obviously, Davis and the Wizards in action tonight against the San Antonio Spurs in Summer League. Big summer for Johnny Davis, so we'll talk to him on the show on Thursday. Right now, though, Take Command from today, this episode out right now. We'll let you hear just a small snippet of it. And we did a mailbag episode, and the first question was really fun. Dove in deep on it. Here you go, me and Logan on Take Command. Today, though, we answer mailbag questions. And this one, actually, Logan, our first ever question from Threads, the new Instagram version of Twitter.
Is that a thing? Oh, wow.
Yeah. Have you missed that?
No, yeah. I just assume that I miss anything related to social media. Like, I'm barely hanging on right now, so.
That's a good point. This is from Threads. And so I want to get the exact question here.
This is a great question.
Back up. But it's about roster construction. It's super interesting. So JInky32 says, roster construction, given a blank state for today's NFL, in which positions do you spend a lot on free agents? Where do you build through the draft? And where are you content with just a guy?
Yeah. I mean, this is such a good question, and I'm sure we could do, like probably 2 shows on this, but just, we got a 15-minute segment. So to me, I think when you look at the NFL, and I think when you look at the analytics, where you want to spend the most money is obviously quarterback, right? I know that's kind of like a throwaway thing, right? Quarterback, you want to
right? You want to get the best value. You want to get
the guy there. You want, like, if you can get Patrick Mahomes, right? I know that's like, oh yeah, great insight, Logan. You want to get Patrick Mahomes. Like, you would be willing for Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, maybe Lamar Jackson's in that tier. I don't know. But those top kind of 5 guys in the league, you'll move heaven and earth to make that happen. That was one of the things with the Deshaun Watson trade, right? Is like they thought they had a top 3 quarterback in the NFL that they could use and kind of elevate the Cleveland Browns roster. Now, obviously, like, that's yet to be seen whether that pays off. But in terms of money, resource allocation, roster construction, that's the most important position in all of sports, and you got to get a guy there. Now, to your point, which I think is really astute, it's you got to get a guy who's good. You know what I mean? You got to get a guy who's good for that money. Like, if you're looking for a top 5 guy in the league, like, you're giving up draft capital, you're giving up money, you're giving up a big portion of the salary cap. It all makes sense, right? And that's not great insight by me. That's just obvious work, right?
Right. So here's what I would say, though, in response to the way the question is asked. Like, where do you want to draft? Where do you want to spend big free agent money? Where do you okay with just a guy? I do not want to spend big free agent money at quarterback. Free agent money specifically, right?
I mean, obviously,
there's
context there, right? If for whatever reason Patrick Mahomes is a free agent,
100%,
you go for it.
Patrick
right?
Mahomes is never a free agent, and that's kind of like the thing.
The point,
why is a guy who's good at the most important position in pro sports available? That's always my question. And like once a decade, you get a Drew Brees situation where he's available because he has a really bad injury, and that injury caused a very bad season. And that bad season meant that the incumbent team could draft his replacement. And there's enough of an injury risk that they're choosing to go younger. And I say once a decade because that's pretty much when it happens. Yep. Once a decade, Drew Brees. Once a decade, Peyton Manning to Denver. Yep. Mm-hmm. They draft Luck. You know, it was Rivers to San Diego at the time. Yep. So like if you get that once a decade guy, fine. Other than that, I think the strategy is to just keep drafting guys till you get the guy, because you know where do you want just a guy? Not at quarterback. You want someone special, and so it's worth to continually kind of do what the Cardinals did, where they drafted Josh Rosen, didn't seem to be the guy. They move on and draft Kyler Murray 1 overall the next year because it was worth it to them for the upside of what Kyler could be.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Like, because like even look at like Russell Wilson. I'm sure when Denver made that trade, they thought, oh, we're reliving the exact kind of formula of Peyton Manning. We're going to get him for 2 years. We'll win a Super Bowl. And obviously, he wasn't that guy anymore, right? And we'll see what happens. And I think I want to bring this up just to kind of, just for some context. Like, to me, the most important thing about your team are your coordinators. Like if you have Kyle Shanahan as your OC, you can get away with Derek Carr at quarterback. You can get away with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, right? You can kind of, it insulates that process a little bit more. So if I'm a front office executive, like the head coach is really important, but I want to make sure that head coach is bringing in somebody that can elevate that position, right? So like to your point, I think you bring up a great point. Like in free agency, you're probably not going to get that dude, right? But if I'm Kyle Shanahan, if I'm Sean McVay, if I'm Matt LaFleur, I'm okay with not getting the guy because I know that I can win with Brock Purdy. I know that I can win with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Matt LaFleur right now thinks he can win with Jordan Love. Look at Mike McDaniel in Miami. He can win with Tua Tagovailoa, right? And obviously they're very talented guys, like arm talent, quick release, athleticism, but they're definitely not a top 5 quarterback at their position.
Right. Well, what I would say though is part of the genius of those guys is they know what they want. Like Brock Purdy is not some random guy. Like Kyle identified Brock Purdy as, like his S2 score, for instance, was extraordinarily high. Yeah. And again, we spent a lot of time in the draft process on S2, but like what that essentially measures is your decision making.
Sure.
And while Brock Purdy lacked some of the physical talent and skills and even production at the college level, there were traits that Kyle looked at and said, this guy's going to learn quickly. He's going to make good decisions. I can put a certain amount on his plate that we can win with. And he went out and executed those things. And between Kyle's ability to insulate and put the correct amount on his plate, and for Purdy's, superior for especially his draft position, mental processing, he made, that's not an accident. It's not like you could put any quarterback as Mr. Irrelevant in last year's draft. Kyle knew what he was getting in Brock, maybe not to that level.
I was going to say,
but like to an extent, that's an intentional choice for that guy to be Brock Purdy.
I was going to say though, like if Kyle was that confident, he takes that guy in the 3rd round, 4th round, right?
Sure.
There's a reason that he's the 7th pick. Like they obviously liked his evaluation. They made him Mr. Irrelevant. They could have drafted literally anybody else that was available. They picked him. They want him on the roster. They want him to be a 49er. So I think that's a very good point. But so to me, I think we've established that like obviously quarterback's the most important position in sports, right?
Yeah.
If you have good coordinators, you can get away with stuff there in terms of developing, insulating, all that kind of stuff. I think we kind of hit on a good point there that you can't bank on the free agent guy because usually, while they are very talented, financially they don't make a lot of sense for your roster, right? Because it really inhibits. That's where like that inflection point, like on PFF they call it the Matt Ryan inflection point, or the Kirk Cousins inflection point, where the guy is good, but he's not good enough to take any roster and elevate it the way a Peyton Manning or the way a Tom Brady, the way, Joe Burrow to a certain extent, Patrick Mahomes can elevate that roster and kind of take you from okay to in contention every single year. So I think that's a really good point by you in terms of free agency. So, the question is, how do you get there? And I think you alluded to it really nicely. It's you draft, and you keep drafting until you get a guy. And so that's why, to me, like there's a couple analytics guys who've proposed this hypothesis that you should literally take a quarterback every single year in the first 3 rounds. just to kind of make sure that you are giving yourself the best opportunity to find somebody, just because the return on that investment is so high. Now, I would kind of slightly disagree with that, because I think you're going to end up with like a lot of talented guys that don't play and that are really big value for other teams. But I think that principle, I think, comes across really nicely in terms of the value in terms of the NFL is really closely tied to the quarterback position. Now, kind of leading into the next part of this is like, if you can't get the guy, where do you invest most of your money and how do you allocate those resources?
I was going to say, so what is the position, or are the positions where you actually would spend in free agency?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's receiver. Receiver is really high in terms of free agency, and people say, oh, well, like, why not DB, for example? To me, receiver is a skill set like from high school, college, NFL. Like, I'm a high school football coach now. It translates. You can see it in another offense. You can see it in a different scheme and say, that guy does XYZ really well. We can magnify that here. Like, it's not like with a DB where it's like, oh, they play predominantly man, or they're used to these kind of rules. There's not like this drastic adjustment. Like, literally, receiver outside of defensive end might be the easiest position on the field to learn, because now there is a little bit of nuance to it. I'm not saying it's like anybody can go out and do it, but like, It's a line on a paper and you have to closely resemble that route and be in timing with the quarterback, right? And you have to be able to win versus man-to-man coverage. So in terms of guidelines, it's very, very specific, and everyone does the same stuff around the league. Like, the verbiage, the terminology might be different, but I'm willing to invest there because I know the transfer is very, very high, unlike some other positions. And like DB, for example, like DB, everyone, like all these analytics guys are saying DB should be more valuable in the draft. You should be willing to take them as a top 5 pick. All these things, you should be willing to spend free agent money there. I balk at that a little bit because the DB evaluation is so convoluted. You don't really know the guy until you're like with them in your defense, and I think that's one of the reasons why, like Forbes was so valuable to this team and maybe not valued the same way around the NFL, because he plays cover 3 match. He plays quarters. He does stuff that they have seen, and the transfer rate is so high for this defense. So that's why I would kind of balk at defensive back. And then the next position for me is probably defensive line, because defensive linemen transfer incredibly well. They transfer from college really well. There's like very solid analytic metrics that support their transfer. So what I mean by that is you look at their PFF run grade production and their PFF pass rush production, and you measure that with their athletic profile, and you basically can just add those up. The people with the highest sums there are the best defensive linemen in the NFL. Like, it's pretty straightforward. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh my gosh, like, can they do this? It's like,
it's not a huge decision-making position.
Correct. Yes. It's like, are you a freak? Have you been productive? Yes. And yes. You're going to be a good pro.
To borrow from John Allen, can you line up and whip the guy's ass in front of you?
I love that, because that's exactly what it is, right? And so when I see a guy on a different team do it, and I say to myself, he can probably do it here, as long as the scheme is relatively similar. Like, to be kind of nerdy football specific here, like, I don't want to draft a guy who's a good 3 tech and have him play 4-eye, which is kind of what they did with John and Duran here for a long time. They were a little bit out of position. And then you see how, like, when I maximize their position in the defense, Duran gets to play more 3, John gets to play more 3, get more one-on-one matchups, how it just explodes their production. So I think there's a little bit of scheme, and that's where the coordinators come in. But in terms of guys that transfer super well, that are really easy evaluations, receivers, D-line, and I know there's some scouts out there that probably listen to this that are like, receivers aren't easy evaluations, like, it's easier to say, like, yes, he can, or no, he can't. There are different flavors of receiver, but that binary yes, no is a little bit easier, I think.
And I think especially once they've already been in the NFL, right? Like, it's one thing coming out of college, but if you've done it in the NFL, like, I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is going to be bad somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like, DeAndre Hopkins went from Houston to Arizona and was still awesome.
Right.
Like, Randy Moss, when he went back to New England and decided he was going to try again, was the same guy that he was in Minnesota. Like,
right.
So as long as there's not other factors, the skill set doesn't really wear down. It's just a matter of, can you do it at the NFL level? Yes. Okay. Well, then you can do it at the NFL level, as opposed to DB. Like, William Jackson III was really good in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
He was awful here.
Yeah.
And so that DB skill set does not translate the same way. It is far more scheme dependent in what you're actually asking that player to do. Quarterback, obviously similar. And as we talked about, good quarterbacks don't become available unless there's some major kind of risk. Running back, by the time you become a free agent, age is already a factor, unfortunately for them. The other one I think that's interesting is O-line, because I tend to think that O-line translates pretty well, maybe not as well as the other two, but like if you're a good offensive lineman, you're probably going to be a good offensive lineman no matter where you go.
Yeah, O-line's tricky, man. It's becoming harder and harder to evaluate college O-linemen just because schematically they're doing stuff that's so different from, most of what the league is doing and the expectations, right? So I think, like there's a PFF just did a study with offensive linemen, how there's like this 3rd year bump for offensive linemen. Like they kind of are okay, and then by the 3rd year they kind of explode in terms of their efficiency and production. And to me, that's just like you're getting more information for your CPU. Like you see more fronts, you see more speeds, you see more rushers, you see more linebacker blitzes, you see more coverage rotations, and you're just like, oh, okay, like I've got it now. Like I'm getting more and more comfortable. And so I think, offensive linemen in free agency become very valuable, especially if you're asking them to do something similar, because they're just getting smarter. It's like I always say offensive linemen are like martial artists, and like it's like the Bruce Lee thing. It's like the guy that masters 1,000 kicks knows nothing, but the guy that masters 1,000 kicks one time is like a genius or whatever the heck the expression is. It's like it's that way with O linemen. Really, it's like just the more time they get on task, the better they are. And I think this is a total tangent, so sorry to the question. But I think that's one of the biggest things with the current offseason structure that hurts that position more than any other position. Because if I'm a receiver, I can go out and run routes. If I'm a defensive lineman, I can go run pass rush drills. With an O-lineman, there's something very specific and tactile about getting your hands on somebody and working combinations. So I think that's an extremely valuable position. I'm going to invest there. I think I'm going to invest there because there's an element of safety there too. You bring in a bad tackle in the draft, you can play guard, you can play center. You can move that piece around and make sure that works. But I think recently it's become harder to evaluate that position group just because college offenses and college defenses are not NFL defenses and are not NFL offenses, and it makes that evaluation slightly more challenging. So, but in terms of hierarchy, that's where I'd go. Quarterback, probably receiver, defensive line, depending on kind of, 1A, 1B there. Offensive line for sure, but it's harder, the evaluation. And then in terms of like what you said, I think running back is basically like there's a million of them,
Right. Well, that gets to the last part of the question, right? Like which positions are you okay with just a guy? And I feel like it's running back and linebacker. Now, just a guy is, relative, right? You want an average NFL player there. But if you have an average NFL player there versus if you have an average quarterback or an average pass rusher, like the impact on your team is not going to be as significant, in part because those two positions are heavily reliant on the lines in front of them, offensive and defensive.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think just look at the draft. Like, look at Brian Robinson. Look at Antonio Gibson. Look at what they've done. Like they're 3rd-round picks. It's not like we had to waste all this draft capital with a guy in the 1st round. It's like, no, they're good NFL pros. Look at Jonathan Williams. Like, he's a 5th-round pick from Arkansas or whatever he is, maybe even undrafted. Like, he's a good football player at the running back position. And I think it's like supply and demand. There's a huge overage in supply, and it's leading to less demand. And so it's not like you can't find, it's not like they're bad football players. It's just there's a lot of them that play running back. And so it's like, why do I need to invest? Like, why do I need to invest, basically? So that's, to me, like, that's not a knock on linebacker or on running back, excuse me. But I think it's the nature of the position and the direction that it's going.
Yeah, the level of player for just a guy is pretty high at running back. Like, just a guy running back can average 4.3 a carry.
Yeah,
just a guy quarterback is going to average 180 yards a game and lose you a bunch.
Of games. Yeah, absolutely.
4.3 a carry running back guy is going to help you win.
Yeah,
so that's nice. Sorry, running backs, but you're just guys, and that's okay.
And then I guess the other one is linebacker. Like, and linebacker, just because like we've seen with this team, like it's just not a very valuable position. I want guys who can. I want guys who can cover better. I want guys, if I need to rush the passer, I want defensive linemen on my roster. It's just a weird position because we've talked about it, on a million podcasts, but it's hard the evaluation is terribly hard. the amount of information they have to digest is incredibly high. So it's like, it's not, I could get the best linebacker of all time there, like Luke Kuechly, for example, and that makes your defense way better. I just think it's so hard to find that guy. And then the return on investment is not that high. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like,
well, I mean, the thing is, like, this is like optimal, if you will, but optimal would be finding a Hall of Famer at every position. Luke Kuechly makes your defense completely different. By the same token, Derrick Henry has carried the Titans to how many wins over the last couple of years?
Right.
So, like, it's not like a great Hall of Fame level running back cannot change your entire complexity of your team in a positive way, that you just like should automatically punt on just a guy, which was kind of the Bijan thing. Like, I love the Bijan pick for Atlanta, because if he's that good and they run the ball that much, he's going to help them win a ton of football games. But generally speaking, you can get away with just a guy at that position more. And you don't need to spend a bunch of draft capital or a bunch of free agent money on it. All right, let's wrap it up. One word answer. I'm going to go through all basically every position. I want draft, free agent, just a guy.
Okay.
Quarterback, draft.
Yeah.
Running back.
Just a guy. Just need a guy with a pulse.
Draft can also be like a fourth round pick later, right?
Okay.
So like investing high premium draft capital, spending a lot of money in free agency, or just a guy is either spending low money or late draft pick in terms of how you acquire them. So quarterback, draft, running back, just a guy, wide receiver.
I'm gonna big money. That's big value for me. So I'm gonna I'm willing to be a high draft pick, big free agency money. I need a guy who's going to make some plays for me there. And again, like Terry is a good example. You can find those guys later. The receiver market's kind of going that way in the draft.
And you pay them when they get to their point.
Right.
Tight end.
Tight end, if it depends on the skill set, obviously. If you got like a Kyle Pitts, like I'm okay with you he's like he's a bucket breaker. He's a blue chip guy, right? I would take him very high. But I would say, like this last year's draft is a really good example. Like if Washington really wanted a tight end, they could have probably picked a guy in the second or third round and been okay. And I think just premium tight end value, like those first round tight ends, they don't bring the value. It's the same thing with free agency. It's like, it's got to be, there's a reason Darren Waller was traded. And I love Darren Waller. I've said that a million times on this show. Like, there's a reason he was traded. It's just the position and the transfer isn't always what you want. Right.
By the way, I was going to let you talk about tight ends because we didn't yet, but you're really crushing this one word thing. Tackles.
Tackles, I'm a big tackle guy, so I want good value there. Like, I want good value.
Guard.
I'm less fired up about guards. People know that who've listened to this podcast.
Just a guy.
Just center. A guy, yeah. Center. I'm kind of just a guy at center. I know that, and someone got, like, after our last podcast, someone messaged me on Instagram and was like, "Well, you think he's just a guy? Like, what's going on there?" I forgot who it was. I'm sorry, but honestly, like, as long as he can snap the ball effectively and get to his landmark in the run game. Like, if you can do that, I'm fine. I don't need like a Hall of Fame center on my team.
You don't need Jason Kelce, although having Jason Kelce
is great. Yeah. If we're getting wish list, I want Jason Kelce or Creed Humphrey.
Yeah, defensive tackle,
high value there. I'm looking for like first round big free agent guy. Yeah,
defensive end,
same thing.
Linebacker.
I draft a guy, but low round guy, someone that with high athletic traits, high athletic upside.
Corner.
I want a good corner, and
specifically draft though.
I think so.
Unless you have a free agent who is playing the same scheme. Like if you're a defensive coordinator, you just hired him from another place, and you're going to bring the guy with you. Sure, but other than that, probably draft.
Yeah, I would say draft because then you want to build them in your system in your language. So I would say
Safety.
Watching Cam Curl, I did a breakdown of Cam Curl a couple weeks ago. Watching him, like, I'm a little bit higher on that, but he's a special case. He's a guy that's super smart. He's big. He's athletic, and again, he was a 7th round pick. So
I like safety in the draft because it's another one like corner that doesn't necessarily translate. Like Jamal Adams, part of that's injury, but like Jamal Adams in Seattle has not been the same dude. Earl Thomas, when he started to bounce around, not the same dude. And some of that was the end of their careers. Like Jamal was not. Jamal was arguably the best defensive player in football the last year with the Jets, and then has barely played and hasn't played well when he's been in Seattle.
Yeah.
Punter, kicker, long snapper. You can whatever. You got to have good ones, but you don't have to spend a lot of resources, which is nice.
Yeah, unless it's who's the guy in Baltimore?
Justin Tucker.
Yeah, unless it's Justin Tucker.
Sebastian Janikowski.
Somebody like that, yeah.
First round pick, but actually wound up being a good one because he was awesome for 20 years.
Yeah.
Sure, fine. Okay, you convinced me. Kicker in the first round. All right, the full episode, the rest of our mailbag questions answered in Take Command. So make sure that you go check that out anywhere you get your podcast. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, we will discuss Patrick Mahomes' giant mansion. No, we actually won't. We're going to discuss what we would build if we could build a giant mansion like Patrick Mahomes, because that is far more interesting. And by the way, if you haven't seen Mahomes' mansion, you should find that on the internet. That's next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, and always live on the free Odyssey app.
Daniel Snyder has agreed.
Team 980 always alive as well on the free Odyssey app. What's up to everybody watching on the stream? YouTube.com/at the Team 980. Anthony, you're being rude right now. Your back is to the people on the internet. Yeah, you're on. Surprise.
My bad, everyone. I was drinking my water.
We need to get a fine system on the show. Levitard does this, and one of the fines is if you cough into a microphone, it's a $5 fine.
What if you cough while the microphone is off?
No, that's literally the point.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, like if you're on camera and you cough, like, you can't help it. But if you turn the microphone off, then you're not. Because remember, there's people walking around right now listening. Whoa. You all right?
No, I was just being dramatic. It wasn't really
Okay, that
cough.
wasn't a real cough. Okay, that was a fake cough. But there's people walking around right now. Like, it's one thing if you're listening in your car and someone coughs. But, like, there are people walking around listening on the Odyssey app with earbuds in. You want someone coughing in your earbuds?
You're right.
Be considerate of them.
I apologize, fellow listeners.
Yeah. We're really sorry about that. What are other finable offenses?
If you like burp, maybe?
Yeah, like I would say burp, cough, anything like that in the microphone. I think when I forget to do the audio on the stream, that's a finable offense.
Very good.
That's a good one. If you don't have a piece of audio ready that's reasonable, that can be a double-edged sword, right? If I call for audio and you don't have it ready, that's a fine. Yes. If, like, it was planned and it's like, bro, we've been, since 1 o'clock, we said this was going to happen at 4:30. What the hell? But at the same token, if I call for something that you don't have, and it's my fault, and I put you in a bad spot, that's a fine for me.
Yes, sir.
So I think that we need a fine system.
We need a bowl or something.
Do we need a whiteboard? It's Prime Day.
Oh, yeah.
Should I just get a... Let's go.
It is Prime Day. You want to know what else is today?
What's today?
7-Eleven Day. So go get yourself a free Slurpee.
Yeah. Amazon and 7-Eleven, two companies that definitely need advertising. I just tried to log into Prime Video. What am I doing? I know I don't want Prime Video. I just want regular Amazon Prime. I need to be able to order whatever. I'll do this in a moment. Just remind me at the end of the segment. I'll get a whiteboard. We'll hang it up. We can do a whiteboard cam. You know, there's all kinds of fun stuff we can do.
Are you going to put it next to that caution sign?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I got to figure out where we're going to put it.
Or if you go like back here.
Yeah, maybe we'll keep it in there with you.
Or behind you.
Well, things don't. Thanks for the reminder. I got to ask CK if there's some stuff that I want to see if I can put behind me. I don't know if there's going to be room, but there's some soundproofing that I think could be good and allow us to hang some stuff. Because, like, I did hang the little flag back here. Mm-hmm. But that's not there's only so much, like, that's a window shade behind me. I can't just hang a whiteboard there. It wouldn't hold up. So I got to figure out a way that we can get the whiteboard, or do I just, like, put it up here and then hold it up? Well, I don't know. We'll figure out the whiteboard details. We're going to have it. But I think what happens is once we've accumulated a certain amount of fine money, we then buy ourselves lunch.
I like the way you think.
Yeah, so that's the plan. Speaking of buying ourselves things, lunch is something we can afford. Patrick Mahomes' new house in Missouri, not on the list. Mahomes built a brand new mansion. It is, I don't even have the numbers on the house in front of me, because that's the thing. Nobody even cares about the house. It's probably got like 9 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, this, that, inside. On the outside of the house is a full-length par 3 golf hole. Single hole, not course, but still, it's like an actual par 3, full-size hole. He's got a gigantic lake with a fountain in the middle, and then a 40-yard, 40 yards plus an end zone, football field with his logo at midfield, if you will. It's obviously, there's no 50-yard line, but a logo in the center of it, his own logo. It's amazing. Do you have the square footage and the other details, Anthony? I saw you typing. This isn't a fine if you don't have it.
Yeah, so I looked it up, and the number that popped up cannot be it.
What does it say?
450 million. That makes no sense.
No, that's his contract.
Yeah, but it says, oh, never mind. It says $450 million Patrick Mahomes builds brand new. Okay.
Anthony.
Reading is very essential. But I will continue to look for that number.
Yeah, I'm not looking for how much he paid for it, because like they built this, they bought the land and then they built it. I just want to know how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, how many square feet. That's what I want to know.
1.8 million.
Okay, so that's actually, I mean, part of that is because it's in the middle of nowhere, Missouri. You stick that house in McLean and it's worth, $20 million. Do we have any bedroom, bathroom, square footage situation?
I'm looking at a lot of stuff right now. All right,
Okay.
here we go.
You can just say no, and I can keep the
Oh,
segment.
no. Sorry.
Okay, so here's the question I have for you. God, this airplane's been slowly making its way towards the runway. So Mahomes goes football field, par 3 golf hole. I'll give you two or three things in your house, your dream house. We did this on Take Command too. What are your dream house things that you want?
For starters, I definitely need a basketball court.
You and I are same page. That's my one seed.
Is that what you were going to go with? A non-negotiable?
Yeah. Well, actually, no. I would say that's my 2 seed.
Okay.
I think a weight room, full badass weight room, I probably just going to get more use out of it. I think that's my 1 seed. But when I'm talking I want an NFL facility weight room with I want a saltwater pod. I want a hot tub, a cold tub, cryo. I want the whole works. Plus really nice weight racks, dumbbells, kettlebells, Kaiser machines. If you know, all that. I want the works weight room fitness facility in my home. That's my 1 seed. My 2 seed is a full-size basketball court.
Outside of the basketball court, I've never really had the luxury of having it, so I would love to have an area to grow crops.
Okay, you want land,
Yes,
just farmland.
I want acres. Yeah,
You want Okay.
I want some acres.
Do you want to hire people to tend to your acres, or are you someone who dreams of just sitting on a tractor?
I didn't say I dreamed of cropping and things. Nah,
I think it's farming. I think cropping is something very
farming.
different.
God.
Oh my God. Woo!
Agriculture.
Anthony wants space for agriculture.
Yes.
Wow.
No, I mean, I think it would be a nice way to cost efficient way of just living. To be honest, you can grow your own food.
I mean, yeah, kind of, but I mean, how about we just get you a garden?
Okay.
Just if you're just
take a
doing this
garden.
for you, so you can have some nice fruits and vegetables. You don't need acres for that.
Yeah.
You just need a little garden, which I think is a great call. A place to go sit outside, relax, and have some. I was in the Botanic Garden over the weekend down by the Capitol, and you walk in there and the air is just fresher because there's plants everywhere. I got no problem with that. If you're trying to, but also I'm asking you about your dream house and you're worrying about cost efficiency.
That is fair. That is fair.
What are we doing, Anthony?
The last thing that I necessarily need in my crib is a driveway with a moat in the middle of it.
A moat?
A moat.
A mope?
A moat. Sorry. A moat.
You just need a sad person in the middle. A mope. You just drive up to Anthony's crib. Who's that? It's Charlie. He's sad all the time. He's a mope. Oh,
that's what I might name the moat.
Poor
Yeah.
Charlie. He's just.
I need a moat in the middle of my driveway.
Swallowing around. But a moat is supposed to keep people out. Why do you want it in the middle?
I don't
Do you
know.
want a fountain instead?
Nah, I don't think I want a fountain. I think I want a moat to put in the middle of my driveway. I will have a fascinating house.
You damn straight you would. I'm yeah, give me a gym, a basketball court. I'll take a theater.
The theater is going to be inside. Oh, so we also were talking
it's
interior as well.
everything. Yeah.
Oh. I'm thinking exterior. My bad.
You want a moat that actually doesn't guard anything. You just want some water in the middle of your driveway to drive in circles around.
Yes.
Okay.
I will have it will be a big house.
I also want a go-kart track. I think I've decided that.
I think I would just hire someone, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea based off of your knowledge of these things. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Stream it on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. We get back. We might just replay the last segment because it's real things, real people said into real microphones, and Anthony just nominated himself 28 times. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live too on youtube.com/@theteam980. Anthony, anything else you'd like to say for yourself about the mansion segment?
Aside from the fact that I want a moat, I want to have a garden, and I want to be a farmer. No, I don't have anything else to say.
Okay. I think then it's time for Real Things Real People Said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, we got some really great stuff today because it was supposed to be yesterday, and then had we had the fine system in place, Anthony would owe some money towards lunch. So I'm just gonna leave that. There. Andre Drummond, where is this from, by the way? Because this was awesome.
He was at some tournament coaching up one of his teams.
Okay, so he's got an AAU team, as many NBA guys do, and he kept it real with his players about what makes a good teammate and ultimately makes you someone who can make a lot of money in the NBA for a long time.
I understand where you guys are and what's going on. I know a lot of this is new. Some of you guys are coming from respective teams where you're the man, you're that guy on your team, and you play 100 minutes, you score 1,000 points, X, Y, and Z. This is not what this is, fellas. And the sooner you guys realize it is the better. But to be pouting on the bench, making faces, not cheering your teammates on when we're down 8 the entire game, come back and go up by 3, and you're not celebrating that, I'm going to tell you something. Fellas, I was that guy. I was a $100 million guy. I was pouting. I was upset when I wasn't playing. And I had a bad attitude. I went from $100 million to a league minimum. And it's a personal story I'm sharing with you guys right now. They don't care how many rebounds you get, how many threes you make. They care about you being as a person. Are you a good teammate? Are you a good locker room guy? Are you someone they can count on each and every night? I talked about consistency. You play 100% every single time you step on that floor. Consistency, fellas. Consistency.
I love that so much. God, I love that. What I knew of Andre Drummond and his rep in the league was a guy who was super talented, and then obviously his game did not really age particularly well as the game continued to evolve to be more perimeter oriented, and kind of got pouty and not a guy you really wanted around. And now all of a sudden in Chicago, they really value him, not just what he does off the bench as a rebounder and a guy who can still get you 10, 12 rebounds a game if he plays 28, 30 minutes, but his leadership and everything is awesome. And to tell that to a younger group, it's something that I think every kid needs to understand. If you're a parent listening and you have a kid, you are not serving your kid going, you didn't play as well as you could, or you did play as well as you could, commenting on their play. Certainly you can encourage them to work and get better, always be the best version of themselves. But the thing that sports needs more of, and the way you will ultimately be successful, is by focusing on how you are as a teammate. Because if you're focused on being the best teammate you can be, you're also focused on being the best player. Just because you're focused on being a productive player who puts up stats doesn't mean you're actually focused on being a great teammate. Those two things don't work as an equation where you can flip the sides of it. Completely unrelated to this. Alina Svitolina, I hope I'm saying her name right. She's one of the best tennis players in the world, so my sincere apologies if not. She didn't quite plan on getting as far as she did in Wimbledon, and that came into conflict with a concert that she was planning on going to.
Last thing I wanted to say was, I'm not sure whether everyone is aware, but you were supposed to go to a concert, Harry Styles concert yesterday. You gave the tickets away. This is a bit better than that, isn't it?
Well, I hope Harry is watching and maybe... I'm just a big fan of his, so, just like...
And we are all big fans of you. Congratulations, Elena Svitolina!
First of all, how incredibly British. We're all just big fans of you. Righto. Impossibly British. Impossibly charming in that way. The good news update here, Anthony, is that Harry Styles was watching, or at least that clip found its way to him. And he was like, we have 4 shows, and I think it was London. You're invited anytime. So, happy ending on that. She's going to get to go see Harry Styles. You'll love to see it. Back to the NBA. Paul George podcast, and this was Tyrese Halliburton talking about the All-Star game last year, sitting with Anthony Edwards and petitioning for Anthony Edwards to be mic'd up every game moving forward for the rest of time.
Exactly what you guys see on Twitter and social media all the time. That is him. I even got to tell this story yet. Remember Dame and Donovan just kept shooting from half court? Me and Ant sitting on the bench. We didn't even really play that much like that. We were just along for the ride at that point. But Dame pulled up from probably 3 steps behind the logo. Ant, look at me. He shot that from Yucatan. I said, Yucatan? I said, what did you just say? He's like, Yucatan. I said, is that a real place? He's like, nah, that's how far that
is. Do you remember when Coach Malone was drawing up the first play?
Yeah.
Funny as shit. Bron, Ant Edwards. I know them two was in the game. He drawing up a play, and it was for Ant to throw a lob. Ant was like, nah, coach. Nah. I'm going to keep it 100.
He's like, I'll do that.
That going to go over the backboard. I don't throw lobs.
That's hilarious. Self-awareness is key, kids. I don't throw lobs. That's not my. I know he jumps very high, but I'm not. It's not my skill set. Also, Yucatan is a real place. The Yucatan Peninsula is in, I believe it's in Mexico, where Cancun is. No help on that, Anthony?
It is definitely. It says the Yucatan Peninsula in North America. So
okay, thanks. Yeah, I think I nailed that. Last but not least, quickly, Tristan Vukovic, the second-round pick for the Wizards. What did Bilal Coulibaly tell you to do?
Yes. I told him, like, talk your shit, Bilal, talk your shit, you know. They got the French ice veins. So, yeah.
French ice veins. English is fun when it's... One thing I will say about learning French, English is a silly language. The rest of the world does it differently. All right, we'll try to do better tomorrow. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980.